Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this joint meeting of the Children and Young Peoples and Families and Education Libraries and Localism Cabinet Panels. On today, Wednesday, the 27th of January, and the time is now 9:30. Before I start the meeting, I need to read the following announcement. With regard to COVID-19 attendance at this meeting, due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Council will be holding this meeting electronically in accordance with the relevant regulations. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in an electronic capacity, and there is a link to the Council's website to allow them to do so. Members of the Council are asked to keep their microphones switched off until called to speak and to switch their microphones off once they have finished speaking. Cameras may be left on throughout the meeting if members wish. If you experience connection or other technical issues, it may help to switch your camera off. Cameras should be switched on if and when speaking in the meeting. To indicate a wish to speak, members should use the raised hand function. Use of the meeting chat function is exclusively for voting. At the end of the debate on each item of business, there will be a vote. Members should vote using the meeting chat function by indicating for, against, or abstain, and I will declare the result after each vote. A break of at least 15 minutes will be held every 2 hours and will be taken after a speaker in the debate has finished speaking. If we are voting, the vote will be concluded before the break is taken. Other breaks will be incorporated as appropriate. And I would mention in that context that there is actually two elements to the recommendation, and the recommendation is at 3.1. Now, how I want to conduct this meeting this morning, please, is to take the winter grant scheme presentation first and deal with that, and then we will move on to considering the report, or to note the report regarding the holiday activities fund scheme, which is being presented also this morning, an update of that. There are some membership changes to the panel. I have no changes or no substitutions with regard to Children, Young Peoples and Families panel membership. For Education, Libraries and Localism panel, Simon Bloxham is substituting for Alan Plancy for this meeting only. Steve Jarvis is substituting for Mark Watkin for this meeting only. Nigel Quinton is substituting for Anthony Rowlands for this meeting only. There are no apologies at this time. For the benefit of those members of the public who may be watching, the composition of this panel today is made up with members from the Children and Young Peoples and Families panel, and they are Nigel Bell, Lynn Chesterman, John Graham, Dee Hart, Dave Hewitt, Leslie Greensmith, Karen Hastrick, Teresa Heritage, who is Vice Chair of this meeting today, Tina Howard, Graham McAndrew, Alan Plancy, Anthony Rowlands and Mark Watkin. The membership of the Education, Libraries and Localism panel is Judy Billing, Simon Bloxham, Annie Brewster, myself, Terry Duris, and I am chairing the meeting today. Michael Hearn, Nick Hollinghurst, Steve Jarvis, Jeff Jones, Asif Khan, Mark Mills Bishop, Michael Muir, Nigel Quinton and Richard Thake. And what I would suggest is when you speak for the first time, you might just mention which division you are representing. I'm now going to ask if anybody has any declarable pecuniary or declarable interests, if you would make those as appropriate. Can I now take the minutes of the meeting of the joint panel held on the 26th of November as an accurate record, please? And I would suggest that if anybody objects to that, you just indicate. And I'm seeing no objections, so rather than go through the whole, we have somebody who is abstaining.
Chairman, that's because Simon wasn't at the last meeting.
It's only me because I wasn't at the last meeting, but I'm more than happy to go with the flow.
Okay, Stephanie or okay for Simon Bloxham to abstain because he was absent in that context?
Yes, that's fine, Chairman.
Representing me today. He's only representing me today.
That's today. We're talking about the last meeting.
He wasn't at the meeting because I was.
I know he wasn't. That no, I know he wasn't, Alan. And we have determined that because he wasn't at that meeting, it's perfectly reasonable for him to abstain.
Correct.
And the minutes have been agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Public petitions, there are none. So we now come to the main item on the agenda, which is the COVID winter grants scheme and an update from the introduction of this at the beginning of November and the subsequent operation of the food vouchers for free school meals to entitled children. And I'm going to call upon Simon Newland to introduce this. There will be a presentation for this particular section, I understand, and there will also be a presentation for the Holiday Activities Fund as well. But if you could all please contain your comments at this part of the meeting for the winter grant scheme, that would be very much appreciated. So Simon, can I pass over to you, please?
Yes, yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Felix is just going to, well, he has just shared a brief presentation on where we've got to with the most up-to-date information on the scheme. We were going to run through it in a number of parts, so I'll do a brief introduction. Felix Gilding, who's been the project manager on the programme, will talk about some of the data which has informed our judgments about priorities. Juliet Whitehead will give a further update on the implementation of the free school meal grants component of the programme. Felix will talk about other elements of how we are currently distributing money in the to children and families, and then Christy Thacker will cover some of the distributions to families without people without children. So if we move on to the first slide, Felix. Yeah, that's just to remind you by way of parameters about the amount of money that we've got, 2.5 million, and that although 80% of it is ring-fenced for families with children, 20% of it we can use for other purposes, and that's partly what Christy's going to be talking about. And the money is predominantly ring-fenced to direct payments in terms of bills, but 20% on other items. And it's very clearly a programme which needs to finish by the 31st of March 2021, this financial year. And that's the point at which the holiday activities programme can commence. And that's where, if you like, it backs onto this presentation. So next slide, Felix. Yeah. And I think this is just to recap for what we talked about at the last meeting, which is the free school meals component, and then there's a range of other programmes. So if we move on to the next one, Felix, and I'll hand over to you to talk a little bit about our client groups and our targeting. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So the next couple of slides will, as Simon said, kind of show the various groups that we are looking to support through the winter grant scheme. We've endeavoured from the start of this programme throughout to be led by the most recent information that we have, working in children's and adults and also in public health. This first slide gives an overview in terms of free school meal entitled children and young people. This is covering the ages of reception up until year 13, including sixth forms and FE colleges. So on the left, we can now see the most recent figure as of the 24th of January this month of the total number of children and young people entitled to free school meals due to their benefit status. So that total is now just over 25,500 children and young people in Hertfordshire. The bar chart to the right of your screen shows the weekly successful applications of free school meals based on benefit status. And what this has shown is a fairly significant increase on successful weekly applications, definitely by the end of November, that has been sustained since November. There was a lull obviously during the Christmas period in terms of that being a family holiday, and normally applications are lower in that period, and some of that demand was pushed into the first week of January. But we are now in the position of between 130 to 140 successful applications a week on average, which is an increase in that flow of people. What the next slide shows is kind of some of the other indicators that we have been using. And these are groups who will, at least in part, fall within that free school meal umbrella. That kind of free school meal entitled group has lots of subgroups within it. One group that has been of particular interest of us have been households that are benefit capped. Now, these are households whose benefits, either housing benefit or universal credit, is capped due to the policies and frameworks around those schemes. Over the course of the last summer, between May and August, what that chart on the top left is showing you is an almost 6% increase in terms of the number of households with children that are benefit capped. And as of August, that equates to over 9,300 children. We've estimated that a benefit capped household is roughly £60 a week less well off on account of the benefit cap system. The pie chart beneath that gives a breakdown in terms of all benefit capped households in Hertfordshire and where they sit by district. And what's been surprising, I think, has been the variation in that. And it seems to be interlinked with the potential availability of social housing and the cost of renting and property. Seems to be a factor potentially influencing that spread of benefit capped households. In addition to that, 3,114 households with children who are benefit capped as of August, there were also 807 households purely with adults who were also benefit capped as well. Towards the right of your screen are some other groups as well that we have considered. So one being the care leaver population in Hertfordshire. And this is split between those under 19 and those between 19 and 25. That's because the Winter Grant distinguishes a child as anyone under the age of 19. And to the bottom right of your screen is an estimate of the number of infants, so children aged 0 to 5 from deprived backgrounds. And that's based on a projection of year 2 children who are on pupil premium grants, and that's been scaled up for the year groups to give us that number. So I'm just going to pass over now to my colleague Juliet, who's going to talk to you about the free school meals work stream of the programme.
Thank you, Felix, and morning everyone. So this slide just reminds you what HCC is doing with regard to free school meals. So £30 was provided for the Christmas holiday period, and £15 will be provided for each child for the February half-term holiday. As you'll be aware, the funding criteria is only for those school-aged children that are eligible because of benefit-related criteria and have previously successfully applied to HCC for free school meals. So although every child in reception year 1 and year 2 is entitled to receive a free school meal through the Universal Infant Free School Meal Scheme, HCC is not providing vouchers for all infant aged children. Only those infant aged children that are eligible because of benefit related criteria are included, and this mirrors what the government is doing with free school meals during term time. We are also including the FE college students aged 16 to 18 years, and the final group are the pupils with no recourse to public funds. Felix, can you move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. The next slide just sets out the progress made so far with free school meal vouchers. 83% of vouchers have now been validated or activated by parents. We sent out a reminder to schools for them to send to parents to remind them that they need to validate their vouchers by the 11th of February. And this is the date when all unvalidated vouchers will expire. I think we just again like to emphasise that we couldn't have done this without the support and hard work from schools and FE colleges, and we have repeatedly sent out thanks to for their hard work that they've done to help us achieve this high percentage. Could you move on to the next slide, please, Felix? Thank you. So we're now moving ahead to thinking about the February half-term holiday period. We're working hard in terms of preparation. We have we've explored using Edenred, who operate the national voucher system that schools are using for the term time for usage for the February half term, but it just proved too difficult to change providers so late in the day with all the practicalities involved. The national voucher scheme was only reactivated on the 18th of January, and Edenred were only confirmed as the contractor by the DFE on the 13th of January. Comms have been drafted for schools and also revised guidance and frequently asked questions for parents and carers and students. And the guidance will address a number of issues that kept emerging during the Christmas run, which hopefully should reduce the number of potential queries that we received. And this will be sent out this week. The email vouchers will be sent to schools on either the 1st or 2nd of February, which provides them with much more time than Christmas to send out to parents and to deal with any potential issues. The education team will again provide assistance for queries from schools and parents together with SVM Global Help Desk. They're the company that actually issue the vouchers on our behalf. So we have a timeline and process in place, which means that for any pupils that become eligible during half term, they will also receive vouchers, but that will be the week commencing the 21st of February. So we'll make sure that we do a data upload for new half term applications and then send this direct to SVM Global, who will then send the vouchers direct to families with email addresses or to the education team for those that don't have email addresses, and we'll make sure that those are sent out in the post to those parents. So I think that's all I wanted to say at this moment on free school meals. Thank you, Felix.
This slide now is showing the other part of the grant that is supporting households with children. And this is kind of working in tandem with the free school meal food voucher system. Many of these offers have already been launched either in December or January. So one of those being the Universal Food Support offer. That was a significant amount of funding that was match funded between children's and adults for district councils and their food bank systems and their local food support groups. There's been really positive feedback from those partners in terms of how much financial support they have received. We've also started to launch, as of this month, specific offers for families with infants. So that's involving 1,200 food vouchers that are now being rolled out through maintained nursery schools and family centres across the county. In addition to that, we are looking at developing further offers in terms of goods, baby goods for children and young people. So that could include things like warm clothing, sanitary products, things like nappies and so on, because of the difference that can make as well. We've also got 2 further offers that we are developing, and a lot of this is really being accelerated and supported by the great joint working both within the council between both adult services and children's services, but also with our partners in the voluntary sector and with district councils. So the main one of those is the 6,000 vouchers that we are planning to distribute to low-income families with children. That will be made up, hopefully, of 4,400 food vouchers and 1,600 Argos vouchers that can be used for white goods. And the idea of those Argos vouchers is that they could be issued in increments to help support those families based on their need, based on the types of goods that they may need. We've had really strong service sign up already from a range of partners, including those delivering children's health services as well. And we hope to launch this offer in February. The other part of the offer as well, that's maybe more specialised, is looking at the specific support for care leavers and also young people in supported accommodation. Again, working closely with providers and with commissioners to look at their food support and their utility bills. And I think as well, when we've been developing this, we're really keen to ensure that all offers on the programme interlink and support each other. So say with the care leaver group, care leavers who themselves are parents, we're really keen to ensure that they are linked in with the support for infants, because there's multiple categories there of need. On the other side of this, we are really keen to ensure that we're able to respond to the most recent needs as they emerge and make sure that we can deliver at pace by the end of March. I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague Christy, who's going to talk to you about the adults offer.
Thank you, Felix. My name's Christy Thacker. I've been leading VPAC, which is a volunteering and people assistance cell as part of the ACS COVID response. And I'd just like to reiterate what Felix has said about the great partnership working. So this portion of the winter grant scheme, it makes up about £500,000. And this is primarily for adults and families without children, but also will enhance the work that Felix and his team have been doing with families with children as well. So also just wanted to say that this builds on, so this portion of the grant builds on from when we received the DEFRA grant back in October. So we received 924K as part of a DEFRA grant, which was for food and essential supplies. And we've utilised that in schemes and up till the end of December. And this portion of the winter grant scheme is kind of launching from the 1st of January. So hence just wanted to explain some of the dates there. So I'm just going to take you through quickly what the cohort is and the support offer. So the first one is we're working with Hearts Young Homeless to provide £45 food voucher, matching the amount that's being given to care leavers as well. And we're planning to launch that in February. We are also working with our providers, our voluntary community sector providers, supporting homeless adults and using vouchers to set up home startup costs. We're also have vouchers for food costs as well for homeless adults with complex needs. We've also enhancing our current Hearts Help Crisis Intervention Service pathway. So we already had in existence a crisis intervention service, which provided both short-term and medium-term support for people that needed financial help. So we are enhancing that short-term offer, and we're relaxing some of the criteria we had in place to make sure that the offer of food vouchers is spread out more. And we're also adding to that why doing some targeted work with some of our voluntary community sector providers, in particular the CABs, and also Age UK Hertfordshire. So we're making sure that we're targeting that support to those people that need it the most. Also, bearing in mind that the voluntary community sector in Hertfordshire are very much on the ground, so are very aware of those individuals that need support. We've also got the universal food support, which is building on from what Felix was saying, where we are giving money to the districts, again, through that partnership working within VPAC to support food banks and also food support groups as well. In addition to that, we've put in a fund managed by HCF, Hertfordshire Community Foundation, where we are giving about the grant's usually about £5,000, but could be a bit more, to those organisations that maybe need some extra funding on top of what the districts have given them, or maybe applying for a new fund, so that we can just reach more of those community groups that are serving the residents of Hertfordshire. And the last part, sorry, that was around the enhanced support, working with CABs and Age UK to target the support to more groups. So that's what I just wanted to give a quick summary of that, and just to really reiterate that we're working very closely with districts to make sure we are getting to those people that need it the most. Also, just to mention that we have produced some posters. I don't know if people have seen that yet, but they've been put on bus shelters and also will be going up in supermarkets. And these are quite simple posters, just explaining to people if they are in financial crisis or they need some support to ring Hearts Help. So Hearts Help is that phone line to triage people into receiving the crisis intervention service. And so far we have had that increase in calls coming through. So highlights that the posters are working and there are people in Hertfordshire that need that support. I'll pause there, for, Felix, and hand back to you.
Thank you, Christy. I think in terms of the presentation, that's everything. I mean, I'm happy to hand over to yourself, Simon, or to yourself, Councillor Terry Duris.
Fine, yes. Well, we'll hand back to Terry for questions now.
Forgot to. Sorry, I forgot. I'm having trouble unmuting myself. There are a number of questions with a number of hands up. I should at this point, because Christy mentioned Hertfordshire Community Foundation, I should declare an interest in that I am actually a trustee of, appointed by the County Council of Hertfordshire Community Foundation. So I say that for the benefit of everybody. And I think that by way of introduction to the questions and the comments, one of the things that is jumping out at me is the level of partnership working across all branches of the County Council and indeed the county to engage with as many people as possible. And I think that's a real credit. And also the way we've actually, with regard to the winter grant scheme and the vouchers, engaged and had the support of the schools, which has been hugely important. And we are very grateful at a time when I know schools were under significant pressure, how they have contributed and supported the distribution of those food vouchers. So I'm going to take them in the order that I am seeing them on the list, which may, but I do know that Anthony Rowlands was the first one. So Anthony, if you could ask your question and to help me with any confusion when you finished, if you could take your hand down. But Anthony, please go ahead.
Thank you, Terry, and I obviously endorse the appreciation officers and yourself have just conveyed, and I think appreciation also to the officers. Clearly an enormous amount of work has been done over recent weeks, and they've had to respond very quickly. Three quick questions. One is, at our last meeting, there was concern expressed, and I expressed it quite parochially, but others endorsed it, about the I think it was only 4 supermarkets were, as it were, enrolled in the scheme. And we asked, and it's recorded in the minutes, and I'll be interested to know what progress has been made in terms of widening the number of supermarkets that can participate. Excuse me. The second question, I wonder if the officers are able to update us on what is in paragraph 4.5 of the report, which relates to the monitoring and reporting requirements, where there is a comment that as it were, the council was still awaiting some guidance that clearly will be helpful and necessary. And I wonder whether any further information has become available. And the third question, looking at those figures that I think it was Felix presented about the numbers of applicants for free school meals, and whether any clusters are emerging once those applications are studied, or are they, as it were, quite geographically distributed? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Anthony. As you've done 3 questions there, which is fine, can I turn to officers to respond to those? And what I'll try and do going forward is, if it's only a single question, I might try and group up 2 or 3 questions so that officers can answer them in a single answer or at one time. So who's going to respond to Anthony's questions, please?
I suggest Juliet.
Juliet, do you want to have a mention about the availability of the vouchers in supermarkets? I know that the Edenred ones, because of the nature of their organisation, have a wider distribution network for supermarkets, which the Family Fund Trust doesn't have. But as you said at the beginning, I appreciate that the notice that was given in the reactivation of Edenred didn't give us time to actually get it up and latch onto that one, and so that's why we've gone with FFT. But do you want to pick up the other ones?
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything additional that I can add to that, Terry. I mean, the only thing I would say is that the Edenred, 2 of the additional supermarkets are Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's, which I don't necessarily think would have addressed the issues that were raised at the last joint panel meeting. But yes, unfortunately, although we had discussions with Edenred and tried to see if we could use them for the February half term, in terms of practicalities, it was just too tight a time frame to move over to them as a provider for February half term.
I think the other thing also, just to add, because I did follow it up, was that there was a comment made, I think by Nick Hollinghurst, about rural communities and little sort of Lundis shops and so on. My understanding there, and I stand to be corrected, is that a lot of those are franchised and they may not necessarily have the same technology to allow the use of vouchers, which is why FFT have gone for them for major supermarkets, Asda, Tesco, Sainsbury's and Morrison's. The other question, Simon, do you want to pick up the other questions for Anthony, please?
I was going to throw them over to Felix, actually.
Okay.
So the question, I think, in terms of the management information requirements, it's a really important one, and we've made sure that we've tracked all of our spend per each subcategory. We've already drafted our first return to the DWP. That was done 6 weeks in advance of the deadline, and we're constantly updating that. We are well within the 80-20 splits, both in terms of household with children and households without children, but also in terms of the balance between support for food and bills versus other essentials. We are also now pulling in fresh award data in terms of how many awards of support we've done. That's building on the more than 25,000 awards we've done for free school meals at Christmas, because many of the social support schemes, both in adults and in the children's parts of the grants, we're really kind of launching either mid-late December or early January. So I think we're in a really good position in terms of the management information requirements. I think the other kind of, data question regarding the free school meal applications. I think at the moment we haven't had the chance to look at the geographical concentrations, if there are any. I think the main thing that struck us is the breadth and the volume of those increases, but we can do that breakdown by district and by school to maybe discern if there are any trends in those new applications that are coming in.
Okay, Anthony, you've still got your hand up. Did you have a follow-up question, or was it a new question? If it was a new question,
no, I thought I'd take my hand down, and I'll take it down.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Right, Lynn Chesterman.
Thank you, Chair. Mine's regarding the adult social and community support, and it's really just to clarify something. Can the food vouchers, or the vouchers that we're giving, can it be used for online shopping? Because bearing in mind, a lot of the people who'd be receiving them, excuse me, will be very vulnerable. Some may not be able to access online, but a lot of them may not be able to go out or feel safe going out. So my query is, can they be used for online shopping? Thank you, Chair.
Is that one for Christy or for Juliet?
Well, Juliet, I think, could answer that. Anyone, any of them apart from me, probably.
Which one of you?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I can talk from the free school meals side of things. All the vouchers must be used in store. The vouchers cannot be used online apart from the Asda ones. I mean, it would be the same for any of the major companies involved with vouchers. If you talk to Eden Red or Black Hawk or any of the other companies, they'd all say the same. It's very much dependent on the supermarkets' terms and conditions as part of the process, unfortunately.
But you did say that Asda do allow that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Christy, did you want to add anything at all?
No, Juliet covered it. It's the same, so that the contract is the same. It's with FFT. Yeah. But I am, whilst I will just go offline and just not go offline, I will just quickly double check that is the same, but it is my understanding that it is the same.
Okay, if you do get an answer before we finish, that would be good. Did you have any follow-up, Lynn?
No, it's just a concern, Chair, that if we're working with Age Concerned Hearts and having many years ago be chief exec of that charity, I really know the group of people that they're working with, and I think to expect older vulnerable people to toddle off down to the supermarket with a voucher, perhaps it needs some thinking through, but I'll be interested to hear about Asda. So thank you very much.
I think two observations from me. One is that just listening to the presentation, the level of reach that we've introduced, whether it be for schools and young people or adults, has been fantastic. And I also commend people, helpers and supporters in local communities who have gone the extra mile to look after those who may be, shall we say, a little less able to get out. Christy.
Sorry, apologies. I just wanted to add on that query, we do have volunteer shoppers. So we do have a real thorough support for people who are either clinically extremely vulnerable or frail, who aren't able to go out. So we have volunteer shoppers and who can use the vouchers on their behalf. So we have got that in place to make sure that people do not have to leave if they don't want to or they can't or are unable to.
That's reassuring. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Richard Thake.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, like to echo Asni's praise of our officer corps. Brilliant work going on here, and of course I think you're absolutely right, the work that's going on out in the communities is just stunning, absolutely stunning. Very simple question: can officers at the end of this meeting send me details of how applicants might get in touch with them to access the HCF, the Community Foundation grants, because I'm delighted to hear that we are playing a part in dispensing those grants, but I haven't personally got a clue on how they might be accessed, and I really would like to disseminate that. So if someone can let me know, that's my question. Thank you.
I think probably what we'll do is we just fair point, Richard. We will get that picked up and just a little bit of information go out. My suspicion is that it might. Well, no, I'm not going to make a suspicion because I may get it wrong. But yeah, we will promulgate that information. Judy Billing, good morning.
Good morning, Terry, and thank you for calling me. I wanted to ask a question in response to something that Christy said, which was about the help that's being given to the district councils and their food provision networks. And I asked the question as an executive member in North Hart, responsible for this area of work, and we have regular meetings with our food provision network and all the people working out there in the community. But the interface with the county council, I've not heard mentioned at local level. So I'd like to know how the work with the district is manifesting itself, and is it possible to find out what levels of financial support have been given to the district councils, because what we don't want to be doing is duplicating any provision, and I think it's terribly important that we know about that. And then I'd also just like to add my thanks to all the officers working their socks off in all these areas. We are very grateful.
Christy?
Hi. So as part of the COVID response, the Volunteering People Assistance Cell was set up, VPAC for short, and the districts have been involved from day one. So we have weekly meetings with district representatives from all 10 of them, and that part of it is chaired by Rob Gregory from Stevenage Borough. So for North Herts, we have Steve Crowley, I think, attending from North Herts District Council's side. And we have given, so we've given 10k per district out of the DEFRA grant. And that was used to support food banks and food organisations. We've then followed that up with another 10k out of this winter grant scheme, as well, again, for food banks and food organisations. And we are letting the districts manage that themselves, because they're the ones that are closer to those organisations. They know what their communities require. So we've been letting them manage that. We've just been obviously transferring that amount. We've also have given money from the CEV grant. So we also received another grant from the government. This time it was from MHCLG, and this was for clinically extremely vulnerable individuals. And we've given money to the districts from that. That's the amount is just being worked on at the moment, so I haven't got the final amounts that are going to the districts at the moment. But that is again being used by the districts. That money is used to support kind of their call centres, actually, rather, because where they are supporting people that are CEV that way. So that's the relationship we've had so far. I'm guessing that each district would manage it slightly differently. Some may be using grants, they may be using funding they already have as well, which I think some are to kind of match fund to give larger amounts out as well. But very much letting the districts lead on that.
Thank you very much indeed.
And I think the one of the messages out of that is obviously the challenge not to create duplication and make sure that the money is spent, every penny of it. Nigel Quinton.
Well, thank you, Terry. Good morning, everybody. Couple of questions, if I may. One is actually following up on the last point and also what Richard raised. There are a plethora of schemes here, and I just wondered if that in itself was an issue in terms of communication, so that people knew how to access what they were entitled to. And the second question was going back to the eligibility for free school meals. And one of the things that came out of conversations with head teachers recently was the previous lack of uptake of application for free school meals. Given the universal offer in Key Stage 1, a lot of families weren't bothering to register. So my question, I guess, for Felix is what of the increase we've seen, how much of that is families waking up to the fact that they needed to register to get access to schemes like these, and how much of it is down to increased need? I suspect it's a combination of the two, but the question remaining is there a significant cohort of families that are missing out through lack of registration for free school meals?
Felix?
Yes, so I think in terms of the point in kind of the multiple schemes, I think it is a complicating factor both in administering and combining those monies to make sure we use them effectively, as well as communicating that to service users. There's multiple things that we're doing to help overcome that. So firstly, finance colleagues, both in children's and adults, as well as programme leads, have been having active discussions throughout January to make sure that obviously our allocations and I guess our back office organisations of the various grants is in sync. In terms of how we communicate that, we are currently developing guidance for various parts of the winter grant scheme. So I think the low income vouchers are a good example of that, because we want to actually help express not just that sub offer of the grant, we also want to help signpost and show the range of other offers that are available, both within the winter grant scheme and also beyond the confines of the winter grant scheme. I think it definitely is an ongoing challenge, and I think with these grants are in some ways almost a bit like a London bus. You wait and then 3 turn up in the same week. I think it's something that we're going to keep working on and communicate, but I think it is in some ways it's a nice problem to have, but it's a problem nonetheless. Mm-hmm. I think in terms of the eligibility criteria for free school meals, the point I think on uptake, especially in terms of universal free school meals, is a really good one. I'm conscious that web team colleagues in the customer service centre have done quite a significant push to drive up benefit related applications for universal free school meals. I think the increase that we've got at the moment seems to be a mix of that catch up in terms of an underground in terms of underlying this, but I think what's accelerated that on top of it has been this increase in poverty indicators that we've seen, especially the increase in universal credit applications as well in the county. There have been 1 or 2 very small pockets where applications for free school meals could be further improved. One example we've had of that has been of education support centres where children are dual registered between schools, and kind of supporting those families to make sure that one or both of those education institutions does an application. It's been something that's emerged that we're looking at. I don't know, Juliet, if there's anything you want to add to that.
Juliet was indicating that she wanted to come in. Yeah,
thank you, Terry. In the communications that I've drafted for schools, I have actually included a section on universal infant free school meals, which schools could, I'm hoping, share with parents to explain how the scheme works and how to ensure that if you think that you are eligible for free school meals through the benefit related criteria, how you need to apply. So I'm trying my best to push that to ensure that those ones that maybe, as you've identified, might be falling through the cracks can be helped. And certainly in all the queries that we received over the festive period, we were pushing that response. We've got sort of wording back to parents just to ensure that if they weren't registered and they felt that they were eligible, how to go about registering.
I think it's also worth mentioning that we keep putting out to schools the request that they should encourage their parents to register the children for entitled free school meals where they are entitled to this, because as you'll know, those children who are benefiting from free school meals on that basis, the school gets pupil premium, so it's in the school's benefit as well to have children appropriately, those who are entitled, signed up for free school meals. But I think it's also, I think looking at the number of applications for free school meals, it does replicate the changes in demography within the county of those parents who are needing to apply for entitled free school meals. Your first half of the question, Nigel, did you get an answer for that, do you think?
Yes, I think I did, although Christie's indicating she might want to come in on that as well.
Yeah. Okay, so Christie?
Sorry, apologies if I'm not using the right protocol, Chair.
Oh, you're okay.
I just wanted to add that for residents of Hertfordshire who require help, it's quite simple. They just have to ring Hearts Help. So even though we've had different pots of funding, the service is the same, and the number that they need to ring to receive that support is the same. And that's when we've done the posters and the comms that have all gone out for the resident of Hertfordshire or the service user. It's just to ring Hearts Help, and then they are triaged appropriately. So the kind of what's happening behind scenes in terms of the different funding pots doesn't affect the service or the advertising of the service or promotion.
That's really helpful, Christy. I think the fact that we can just tell residents one number is just wonderful from our point of view, because it just makes life so much simpler.
Absolutely.
And I have a feeling that the number, and Christy will correct me, is 0300 123 4044.
Brilliant, well done. Yes, absolutely.
And I think that is such an accolade for the county council across all areas, that there is a single number that you can call if you need that help, and they will actually direct you to the appropriate area to be able to provide that help for you, whether it be in terms of free school meals or support or social prescribing, because that's one of the other things that is so important and would be a topic not in this place but somewhere else, which I've seen, and I'm really very passionate about developing that and so on. But that's me on a soapbox, so forgive me. Can we? Are you done now, Nigel?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay,
thanks to officers. Brilliant report.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that as well, and we'll make sure that the officers have heard that. Mark Watkin, good morning.
Good morning, Terry. Good morning, everybody. And thank you for mentioning the pupil premium point, because I was about to, so you took my words. But it's one of the great challenges for schools is to get parents to sign up to free school meals. And if anything positive comes out of this awful situation, if more children do get support and the school gets more money, that's a great point. A couple of questions, really. One is to Juliet. You mentioned, Juliet, that the Christmas vouchers must be validated by the 11th of February, I think you said. I may have got the date wrong. That's sort of worrying. And I know we've had a high validation. I think you said 83%. So do they then become useless, which is a great shame? Or what can happen to vouchers at that point? And if there's a deadline for these, is there a deadline for the next batch coming out in the half-term period? Could you clarify? That's one question. And the other one was, I think actually Christy or Felix mentioned, I just put eligibility for various schemes. Presumably you are eligible for a scheme, not multiple. And the final point is more of a request, actually. I think county councillors can be a wonderful source of good information that we could post on Facebook pages and community associations. I would like something that's nice and chunky that will easily be, sent. I can distribute to all my residents' associations, and I'm sure most councillors would want to do the same. When you put it together, can it be in a nice sort of form that I can just take it straight onto a Facebook page and say that's what you want to do, people. Okay, that's what I wanted to raise at this point.
Okay. Vouchers deadline 11th of February. Juliet?
Yeah, when we say the 11th of February deadline, that's not for spending, that's actually for going on, and they have an email link and they have to click on the link in order to order their vouchers. Most of the vouchers have a minimum of 12 months before they have to be spent, but we have to have a cut-off point in order to know how much money we have left over from the ones that haven't been activated we could use for other elements of the winter grant scheme and projects. And it will be the same for the February. It will be, I think it's 2 months for them to actually go on and click on the link and order the vouchers.
And for the avoidance of any doubt, as you say, it's the store that sets the time by which the voucher has to be spent, but it's the deadline date of the 11th of February, and it's at that point then that we are charged for the number of vouchers validated.
Absolutely, yes.
Just picking up on that though, Juliet, given the fact that we've got a hard deadline of the 31st of March, and I know that there is a line in the government guidance that says as long as it's commissioned by the 31st of March, for particularly relating to vouchers, free school meal vouchers, that they may not be validated. Presumably there is an opportunity, a little bit of leeway for the validation date to spread just beyond or sometime near to the very end of March.
Can I hand you over to Felix for this point, just because yeah.
No, I think in terms of that, the family would absolutely be within their rights to validate and use that voucher after the 31st of March. The most important thing is, have we actually distributed that voucher to them before the 31st of March? That's the key point.
But the point I was, if you like, getting to is that it's the validation date that determines what our cost is going to be and the return that we have to make to central government.
Yes, it will. Yes, because the validation date is the main indicator in terms of use of the actual schemes. I think it's something that I think many authorities are going to be raising with DWP, especially with the advent of lockdown and the approach to February. I think it's quite different than first envisaged. We do have another national conference call at the start of next week with DWP to kind of run through the February half term and the 31st of March deadline.
That's helpful, thank you. Right, Jeff Jones.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chairman. And thanks to the officers for the amount of work they've put into bringing forward this scheme. Yeah, very well done indeed. But my question really relates to the voucher scheme again, really following on from Anthony Rowlands, who highlighted the same concern as I had with the sort of limited number of retailers that have that the voucher you can use at, just the four retailers, and I just wanted some clarity on how that works. Do you ask the well, this is obviously done with FFT, do they ask the retailer to sign up to the scheme, and then they have a choice? So I mean, I'm assuming one of the big retailers, of course, Co-op, are not in the scheme. So have they decided not to join up, or were they not invited? Just some clarity on how that works. I mean, it does particularly affect my division. There's only one retailer, which would be Sainsbury's, that where these vouchers could be redeemed. So it is pretty limited, and it's only a sort of Sainsbury's local or whatever they call it. And you know, we've got a co-op. To travel to other participants in the scheme, you know, you're talking 10+ miles, which really wouldn't be convenient for holders of the vouchers. So yeah, I still am concerned, because we did bring it up obviously before Christmas at the panel meeting, and it was highlighted that yes, this was just for the Christmas period, but it has seemed to carry on now. And then just some clarity as well on the vouchers for the sort of low income families. Which I think it's £45, the food vouchers. Is that the same? Is that limited to the 4 retailers that have signed up to the scheme? So perhaps that's something for Juliet. I'm not sure. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think Juliet can start with the distribution of the vouchers. I think the one thing I would say, and I again stand to be corrected, is that we have had very, very few complaints or negative observations, shall we say, about the way the voucher scheme operated over the Christmas period. But Juliet, do you want to pick up Councillor Jeff Jones's comments?
Yes, I will do, Terry. The difficulty is, I mean, as I said, there are most of the companies that are out there work with, there's only a couple of actual voucher issuers, as it were. So Family Fund Trust work with SBM Global, and Blackcourt used the same company, SBM Global. So we're really in the hands of SBM Global as to who they negotiate with in terms of supermarkets. All of the companies that I'm aware of, none of them work with the co-op, and I think the reason is because the co-op is a franchise organisation, so you wouldn't be talking to one overall company. This is my understanding, you'd be talking to all the individual co-ops. So I think that overall, if you look at any of the main organisations that are involved with issuing vouchers, there are a limited number of supermarkets that are involved in the process, because it tends to just be the larger supermarkets that I suppose have the power, the money to get involved. I'm not really sure of all of the intricacies, but as I say, I mean, we did explore with Eden Red, and that would have given a couple more supermarkets. But as I said, the ones that they were offering, I think there might have been one more, you know, is Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's, which I don't think would have addressed the issues in your constituency. So I think, you know, we've tried our best, but I'm afraid this is the situation we're in. I would echo Councillor Terry Duris's point in terms of the complaint or the queries that we've received. We've had no complaints from memory of anybody complaining about the supermarkets that have been involved in the process, in the queries. So to reassure you.
Okay, Felix, did you want to pick up the question of the low income?
Yes, unfortunately, it's the same mechanism that we're using for the low income vouchers. Yeah. Okay. Obviously, there's a sub portion of those vouchers that are also for Argos, for white goods as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that clarity.
Pleasure. We move to Steve Jarvis.
Thank you, Terry. Some of what I was going to say has already been covered. I'm concerned that the circumstances of the pandemic mean that there are a lot of people who are going to find themselves in need of these sort of support, who've not historically had any engagement with us at all. And I understand how that's going to work in terms of the engagement by schools, but in terms of providing support for families with children who are below school age, who are maybe people who've not had any engagement with council in the past, how are we making sure that they're aware that that support is available? Clearly, Hearts Help is the mechanism for them to access it once they know they need to make that call. But how are we making sure that these people are aware that assistance may be available?
I'm not quite sure who might be the best person, but while they're thinking of who's going to answer that, what I would say is, to some extent, Steve, I would refer you back to Mark Watkins, comment, because I'm quite sure that the vast majority of county councillors have got a Facebook page that they can actually use that to get information out on, and Facebook is powerful because it can be shared and distributed widely. But having said that, that's the informal way of doing things. The formal way is, as you heard from Christy, putting up or having signs on bus shelters and putting it out as widely as we can. And I think also there's been significant levels of coverage in local news media, whether it be online or paper. Whilst there will always be some people that the message isn't available to, I think, and I'm not trying to be overly confident on, not confident, that's the wrong word. I think that we are doing a great job in getting the message out to the widest possible audience. There'll always be more, and the word does spread. But Juliet or Felix, did you want to come back and answer Steve's points particularly?
No, I'd be happy to answer on that. I think it's a really powerful dynamic in terms of people who are new to service and people who may have never reached out for support before. And I guess it's one of the advantages actually we're trying to convert with this scheme. It's not just about giving someone a voucher. It's about using that offer of a voucher to bring someone into service, to bring someone into support, to make a longer term impact on their life. I think for families of under 5s and those with very young children, absolutely that need to communicate with them is even more important. Fortunately, we've done, I think, 2 main approaches. One is through communications in general in the public, and the other is through the services that we're working with. In terms of the communications, there is that local advertising approach that we've taken. We've also done quite a big push on social media. I think our tweets about the various bits of support we do have reached, I believe, at least 30,000 people online already. In terms of the service reach, we're working with all of our family centres, which cover the county, and all of our maintained nursery schools and other early years settings. That's specifically why we've made the early years specific offers to help highlight that support. We're also working really closely with other key services that would work with very young families, be that the Care Leaver Support Service, intensive family support in Families First, that's also district wide, and also there's universal health services, mostly supported by Hearts Community Trust for children and young people. I think we're trying to basically build a coalition of services to engage with these in-need groups in as many ways as possible, because you're absolutely right, it's so important that we get the message out and engage with people, especially those who are really new and suddenly in crisis and need.
Thank you, Felix. Juliet, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think I have anything further. No. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Steve, did you want to come back at all? No, I don't think you did.
No, I think there's a very useful. I mean, I think the point that Mark Watkin made about making sure that as members we have information that we can reuse and repost easily is also important, because that can obviously make a contribution as well.
Well, yes, and I would just mention on that the very excellent members bulletins that John Birch puts out almost at least once a week and sometimes more frequently, that covers a wide range of information that members can pick up, and that's a very useful facility that we have. We now go to the Cabinet Member for Children, Young Peoples and Families. Good morning to Terry Heritage.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much. I was waving my hand a little bit earlier to talk about. No, that's all right. I was going to talk about family centres, but Felix did it, so that's great. So we move on. Yeah, I just wanted to come in here again, actually, and congratulate everybody, as you did earlier, on the partnership working, because I think that's actually, and what Felix just said as well, actually shows how this is a whole county effort, no matter whether you're public bodies, charitable bodies, whatever. And actually, the members of the public have been great as well. So I'm really grateful for that. The point around how we find out, or how residents find out and talk to people, Hearts Help, I was going to mention that, so that's come up already. Free school meals has always been a challenge, as those members who are still on council that did the free school meal scrutiny way back when, and I can't remember, Chair, if you were on that one.
I was.
But that really did highlight to us the difficulty on encouraging families to actually register for free school meals and not worry about any stigma, because that's the big issue. And I do think, and sadly again, this particular epidemic has, or pandemic I should say, has actually not encouraged but brought this all home to families. And I just wanted to say that for colleagues here today, because you're all interested in this, that the work that we're doing now and the gathering of the data, which is really important, is going to be extremely important for the council going forward. So we will be gathering all the data and putting it together and looking at how we can help families post-COVID. I've mentioned before the family poverty strategy, excuse me, but you know, this is really, really important. So all the information we're collecting is wonderful. Scott, sorry. And just finally, in relation to the communications, there have been things on Facebook. You've got to look out for them, but they have been there and I've been sharing them. But do look for more, so that it's been there. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. And I absolutely reiterate your comments about the partnership working, and also actually the friendly nature of the word Hearts Help. It's a friendly title that engages with people. We just have, I think, two more speakers, John Graham and Annie Brewster, and then we'll move on to the second part. Oh, and then Nigel Bell, and then we'll move on. Oh, Nigel Bell has disappeared again. Move on to the second part, but John.
Chairman, I'm going to be very brief, and I've not got a question. I've really got a comment, just to say how impressed with what I've seen this morning. We can read the papers, but the presentation we've had this morning has brought it to life with me, and I've really been impressed by what I've seen on a number of aspects, the range of benefits offered, and the thought that's gone into this programme, where we've looked at the beneficiaries and then targeted our offering and tailored it to their needs. And that we're covering aspects outside the basics. I mean, particularly the Argos vouchers for the lower income families. And I just echo a couple of points picked up. You mentioned the level of reach, which I share with you. I think is excellent. We've sought to target this to as wide a group of people as possible. And then I picked up the point that Felix made, which is this is not just using a voucher, but is bringing people into service. And I think that aspect, it just underlies the thought that's gone into this programme. And just for me, it's just excellent, and well done to the officers for putting it together. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Annie Brewster. Not sure if Annie's with us. Well, let's while we're waiting, Nigel Bell, your hand has been up and down with great rapidity. So I assume you want to ask a question or speak.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I've been waiting here from the start. But
I'm sorry, your hand, never mind, but carry on.
Can I echo everybody else's thanks for all the efforts that everyone's done, all the officers and everyone else. And I'll just make a comment, and I've got two questions. Following on from my colleague Judy Billings' question about the help to districts, and it's largely been said that it's going to be left up to districts. And of course, we trust the districts and we're delegating. But is there any way that that can get followed up? That the 10,000 that went out, and then also the 10,000 for the food banks and the food groups in those areas, are we able in any way to kind of make sure that the 10 districts, have properly distributed them? I realise there's other things that come before that. And then my other two questions: one, it said we were told the 83% of free school meals eligible redeemed their vouchers. Is there any way of knowing about the other 17% and sort of not forgetting them, or for the reasons for the, and I know 83% may be very high, but just thinking about the other 17%. And obviously very important for us is obviously care leavers. We've got the 66% care leavers under 19, and obviously those 626, is it over 19? But is that the full reach, if you like? I mean, are there any that have been missed? Can just whoever confirm that we've got to as many care leavers, or hopefully all care leavers that we can get to. And can I just echo again what others have said about publicity? It is good, the Hearts Help and the one number. And I just hope that all districts and all media outlets are publicising that, as well as schools and early years, as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Nigel. I'll go to Felix, but I think I do need to make one comment with regard to the publicising of the Hearts Help number. We can put that out to the media. It's up to the media whether they actually publish it or print it or communicate it out. But we are. I do genuinely believe that we are putting that out as widely as we can. But Felix, do you want to pick up the question about the 10 districts and possibly the hidden 17%?
Yes, so I think in terms of the money given to districts, we have started, I think at least from last week, exploring with district councils how they have exactly used that money in terms of number of awards they've made. So that audit process has already begun and still got, say, 2 or 3 weeks to go. And we're very confident that we're going to pull that information in. I think also the ongoing weekly engagement we've had, especially through Christy and Melanie Barton at the VPAC Arena, has really helped keep a focus on how the money is used. In terms of the vouchers, in terms of those that have been activated and those that are still awaiting activation, we are able to actually track through the voucher company where those 17% of vouchers are. The initial results that we have had is that they are scattered quite loosely across the system, which in some ways is actually quite reassuring, because what that means is that it hasn't been, say, a failure to distribute or understand it in a particular locality or for a particular school. It's more of a broader crowd of people who maybe kind of have forgotten about it or who might have some difficulties. But we are absolutely pushing with schools through the bulletins. Please encourage your families to activate it, and we're more than happy to look at those non-redeemed numbers to see if there are any targeted bits of work we need to do there. In terms of the care leavers, it's a really, really good point. It's a group that we really don't want to forget, who is in many ways especially vulnerable at this time. Those numbers, I think, are literal numbers as of last week from the Care Leaver Support Service. And those, I think they have a duty to be supporting care leavers up to the age of 25. So that's been the main kind of care leaver population we've wanted to look at. But we've also included young people who might be in Hearts Young Homeless, as well as individuals who may also be in supported accommodation. It is a fluid area and there are overlaps, but we're making sure that we're using literally live data to cross-reference and ensure that every single person in that especially at-risk group is supported, and especially kind of signposting, especially those care leavers who themselves are parents, to further support as well. I think on the publicity point, absolutely, it's looking at using all channels, services, our social media, partners and the media at large as well, and we're going to absolutely keep pushing that. Also, as part of that, we have adapted our communications for various needs groups such as SEND, putting things into easy read, sharing that with specialist schools, to try and make it as truly accessible as we can.
Thank you, Felix. Very comprehensive answer. Appreciate it.
Thanks for that. And I'm pleased that they are. Sorry, am I able to come back?
Yeah, go on, Nigel.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm pleased that they are. I had to raise care leavers because I think it's the most important group of young people we have to think about, and I'm pleased that you're following it up on that, and also on the 83% that you're taking note of that and doing what you can on that. So thanks very much. I think, Terry, can I just say, I know my colleague Asif Khan wanted to ask a question. I don't know if he was on there.
Well, I did. His hand wasn't up, but I will come back to him in a moment. As I say, his hand wasn't showing, but it is now. It's just come up. But can I just make the point that Terry Heritage has made, which is care leavers will be supported by their PAs and chicks, and and chick will remind them to use that. And there's also a strong care leaver service now as well. So that's something which you might want to pick up under the regular panel or to and in another place, Nigel. Caroline Clapper actually has said that she's had her hand up from the start. Well, like Asif, I'm afraid it wasn't showing up, and that's, I'm sorry about that, but it seems as though your question has been answered. And Annie Brewster wanted to say she's got sound problems. I will just try. Annie, are you there? No, she's not. And she just wanted to say Hearts Help links vary and menus not clear about family food help. A black information banner with a warning sign appears on some but then disappears. Sorry about the sound. Not that you can pick that up later on in chat. Asif, I'm told that your hand is now up.
Apologies for up and down and up and down.
No, that's all right. Go on. You've got the last word.
Oh, thank you. My query is actually on those hard to get areas, and talking about BAME families who are having difficulty about accessing this support. Is that, anecdotally I'm getting that. I'm just wondered if there's any evidence to show that pick up within BAME families and support for them in particular. They often do miss out, whether it's translation issues or technology issues and so on.
I think the one thing that has come out this morning is that the breadth of the coverage of this. So I guess it may be that there could be a family that has not actually been able to access that particular element, but I'll turn to Felix and see if he has got a response to that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Duras. I think the point in terms of supporting BAME families is definitely something that we picked up in our first EQIA, I believe in mid-November. And we put in multiple things in place to kind of help outreach with those groups. The first thing that we've done is linking in with corporate communications colleagues, is making sure that we have translation services ready to kind of respond to requests for translating materials. Unfortunately, kind of translating stuff up front, it would be more difficult to implement, but the next best thing is to be ready to translate to support access to service. What we've also used is actually updating the e-directory on the Hertfordshire County Council website to include a range of community groups. That has involved community groups from particular BAME and also from faith backgrounds. And we are looking at developing comms specifically for the faith network. And I think the last bit, I think maybe especially linking into the role of Hearts Help under Christie, but also the VPAC arena, is really opening up this grant to voluntary groups that support kind of particular communities in the Hearts. I think that's, I guess, another way that we're trying to make sure we engage. But it is a really poignant point that we want to definitely keep an eye on and not lose sight of.
Thank you, Felix.
Thank you.
Okay, Asif, yeah.
No, thank you. So so if any, I can point you to certain directions in Watford should you need any help.
Okay, I would imagine an awful lot of the individual groups will have their own local support groups, but that's a helpful contribution. Thank you, Asif. Right, Mark Watkin has crept in at the last minute.
I have. It'll be very quick, Terry.
I know it will be, because I'm going to cut you off otherwise. But carry on, Mark.
Just really following on, as if just made me think of the people like the mosques and the other religious communities who have strong connections into their families. Are we communicating well with religious groups as well as others? Because that's the key one. And I was going to mention Home Start as a clear access to families in difficulty.
Home Start or Hearts Help?
Sorry, that was a question. Did we get to answer it or not?
No, sorry, no. Did you want to respond, Felix? I think it was more of a statement actually from Mark.
Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Doris, can I just come in just to explain a little bit on how we are linking in with faith groups and some BAME groups as well, please?
Yeah, of course.
So we are doing some specific work for the Gypsy and Traveller families, and we're working with GATE, which is the Gypsy and Traveller Empowerment Community Group, and also the Gypsy and Traveller section within Herts County Council, who manage the sites, to make sure that communication is given to Gypsies and Travellers around support that is available. We are also working, we started a project started within VPAC called the COVID Information Champions Project, which has been funded by the Health Protection Board, and this is around champions within the communities, and we are specifically looking at faith groups where we have champions talking about the offers of support that are available, but also other COVID messaging such as vaccinations, etc. But they are also making sure that that support is known about where people can ring and the support people can access as well. And again, very much targeted at the BAME and faith organisations.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you. Annie Brewster has got her hand up. Annie, are you back with us now?
I'm not sure. Tell me. Am
You
I?
are.
Brilliant. So sorry, I went out, came back in, so you might have seen what I wrote, but just if you might have picked it up. Sometimes the black banner disappears and then it's hard to find any reference to food and families on Hearts Help websites. There's lots of ways into it. It comes up with lots of different options. So it might be worth having a look at that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I think probably Christy's heard that comment, and Christy, perhaps you can have a look at that. The recommendation, which when we come to it at the end of the meeting, will be to note and comment upon the progress to date and in the implementation of the Winter COVID Grant Scheme. And I think all the contributions have been extremely helpful and considered. So I thank everybody for that, and I repeat our thanks to all the officers and all our partners across the county for everything that they've done and continue to do, and I think that we are very fortunate in having such a wide range of supporting partnerships and groups that will go out and support those people who are vulnerable, anxious, and in need of a friendly word from time to time. So I hope that will be put out across the media. And within the media also, just let people know that Hearts Help is here, and I'm going to pose again and just remind everybody of the number 0300 123 4044. What I'm going to suggest, we've spent nearly an hour and a half on that, so I think rather than take a break at 2 hours, I'm going to suggest it's now 10:59. I'm going to suggest that we just take a very short 5-minute break, just 5 minutes, to stretch a leg, and we will recommence. Don't turn things off, but we'll move forward with the Hearts Holiday Activities and Food Programme at 11:05, which is in 6 minutes' time.
Terry? Chair?
Nigel, yes?
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
which is to, if you like, note and comment upon the preparations.
Sorry, it's Stephanie. We're not live yet. If you just
are we? Oh, sorry.
If you just give us 1 moment. Okay, we're live now.
Thank you, and welcome back to this meeting. And we now move on to the second part of the meeting, which is to note and comment on the County Council's preparations for the holiday activities and food programme. And to take us into that, I think it's either going to be Simon Newland or Joe Fisher. So
it's Joe Fisher, Councillor Juris.
Thank you very much indeed, Joe, and welcome to the meeting. And look forward to your presentation. Are you joined by other people, by the way, for this, or is it you?
Pablo is here with me.
Okay.
The operational lead, but otherwise it's me.
Excellent.
Can I just check, Councillor, that you can see my presentation?
We can.
Good. Okay, thank you. So my purpose this morning is to introduce the Hertfordshire Holiday Activity and Food Programme. And this builds on pilots elsewhere in the country from 2018 and extends the Holiday and Activity Programme to all local authorities, including Hertfordshire, to cover the Easter, summer and Christmas period this calendar year. The programme's focus is on free holiday provision, including healthy food and enriching activities for all children who are eligible for benefit-related free school meals. And it's inextricably linked to strategies that promote health and well-being, which the current pandemic has shone a very bright light on, and the increasing emphasis on tackling family poverty as more and more families fall into economic hardship at this time. Just prior to Christmas, the government announced our grant allocation as just over 2 million, which will cover delivery and coordination of the programme locally. And it is intended that the offer is for all children who are eligible for benefit-related free school meals. And in the previous presentation, you had these figures presented to you, but just to remind you that currently the numbers of children eligible for free school meals is just over 25,000, which covers reception through to our further education cohort. And those figures are live from the 24th of January. And again, Felix in the previous presentation was talking to you about the growth of uptake of free school meals of around 0.5% a week that we've seen in recent months. It's a fairly new programme, so I've told you that we were given our grant allocation just before Christmas, and our first briefing with the Department of Education was about 2 weeks ago. But that said, there's a real emphasis both on moving at pace, but also at working in partnership in order to roll out the activity and food programmes. And to that end, we've partnered with Herts Sports Partnership and Herts Community Foundation, and they will lead on the coordination of the programme. Herts Sports Partnership have got a huge wealth of activity across Hertfordshire in delivering activity programmes and healthy meals. And you may well be familiar with the Fit, Fed and Read programme that was piloted here in 2019. And that really enabled Herts Sports Partnership to consolidate some partnerships with our Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, the Library Service, Herts Catering, as well as some of our own Families First and Early Help teams within the council. But the organisation has a really firm foothold in partnering with schools, with the voluntary and community sector, the faith groups, and also with the districts. So they'll be able to bring that experience and expertise into the coordination. And Herts Community Foundation have we've already established very close partnership with Herts Community Foundation, including during the current pandemic. And they bring particular expertise in grant distribution, but they will also bring some expertise in terms of training the programmes to ensure there's a consistent quality of service provision and some very clear quality assurance standards. A couple of key principles that will inform how we roll this out. The emphasis is very much about not just establishing new activities, but building on some existing activities so that we've got a full and inclusive offer for all children, not just those on free school meals, but also making sure that children who aren't on free school meals are also included within the activity programme and can buy a place on the activity programme. And I noted Councillor Heritage in the previous conversation talking about the need to avoid stigma, and that is exactly what we want to do here. So we're intending a fully inclusive programme, including for children with disabilities and SEND, and including the older age range of teenagers. And it is important to say that whilst we're partnering with Heart Sports Partnership in terms of the coordination, and we're very clear that this is bigger and broader than sports, and indeed Heart Sports Partnership already have a good foothold in providing a whole range of activities, but we're certainly intending to have both sports activities but also arts and cultural activities across its full breadth. Lastly, we're keen, and Hearts Community Foundation are keen to support us in thinking how we can sustain this beyond the lifetime of the grant. It is early days in our thinking, but we do know that Hearts Community Foundation have got experience and expertise in attracting different sources of revenue and grants, and we're keen to work with them to that end. I've already mentioned that and you've certainly got the idea that this is very much a programme operating at pace, but in the early days. And we're currently planning around expected reach and uptake and doing some modelling around that. We do know from looking at the pilots, but also from the previous experience of people like Heart Sports Partnership and Hearts Community Foundation, that full uptake isn't something that we're expecting or anticipating. The offer will be a full offer, but we need to do some modelling around realistic and anticipated uptake and reach. We need to get to the Department of Education by the 19th of February, our first delivery plan for Easter, which isn't that far away. And certainly the expectation from government is that given the current impact of COVID-19 and lockdown, that the Easter offer will be different to the summer and winter activities, and certainly there's a steer towards consideration of virtual activities, including online courses, but also delivery of arts and activity packs to families most in need. And we're just beginning to do some planning around that offer, but that will sit alongside and complement the distribution of free school meal vouchers over that period of time. You know, I've already mentioned that we're keen to work in partnership with the whole range of voluntary community faith groups and schools across the whole of Hertfordshire in doing that. We've established a clear accountability structure, a steering group that I chair, but it's made up of representatives from across the council and key stakeholders who hold responsibility for decision making and delivery of the activity and food programme. And Heart Sports Partnership and Hearts Community Foundation will provide reports and updates into that steering group every 2 weeks. We've had our first meeting and the second meeting is next week. But in terms of the broad operational engagement with interested services and organisations, Heart Sports Partnership and Hearts Community Foundation are going to arrange a number of operational groups made up of community and district organisations to make sure that we've got that full engagement across the board. We're working at pace. We've finalised our agreement with Heart Sports Partnership and Hearts Community Foundation. I very much need them to hit the ground running so that we can meet our first deadline in February for the Easter break. And Hearts Community Foundation are working with us to draw up a grant criteria, which we will review at our next steering group on the 4th of February. And they'll be bringing a mobilisation plan with very clear milestones and targets to us for the steering group on the 15th of February, with a view to submitting our final report on the 19th. So there's a huge amount of work going on, and I am aware that, you know, I'm sure there are lots of questions, and I'll do my best to answer them, but very much would ask you to note that this is early days in a huge programme of activity that we're just getting off the ground. So that's it by way of an introduction from me, Councillor Dewars.
I think I could almost characterise it by saying that if this was a house, you would be building the foundations. So there's perhaps not a great deal to see above the ground level, but it will suddenly rise, and there'll be a fantastic structure.
Yeah, we got a lot of builders on it.
Absolutely. Interestingly, I saw somebody's hand flashed up. Anthony Rowlands, you've got in first again. Well done. Carry on, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Terry, and thank you, Joe, ever so much for that report. I don't really have any detailed questions, but I suppose what related to that, I think what will be helpful, and appreciate you're moving very quickly on this, and it's going to be so much bigger than the predecessor I wouldn't say were pilots, but there obviously have been predecessor initiatives, but this is going to be enormously larger, and I wonder whether, through you, Chair, whether some means by which members of the panel can be provided with, as it were, regular updates. And I have obviously a specific interest, and I'm sure there are other people on the panel who have got district responsibilities. I'm the portfolio holder for leisure, and certainly there's going to need to be very close working relationships between district and county on this, and I certainly want to support that as best I can. I'm sure others would. So it's really, can we have some means of not wanting to create work, but just having the updates as to where it's reached? Thank you.
Anthony, I'm very happy to respond to that and say yes, we will let members have updates. I will go away and talk to Joe and Pablo and Simon and see which is the best way to deal with this. But we want everybody to be kept informed, because, as we have previously said this morning, communication to the wider communities is very important. So we are not going to keep you in the dark, so to speak.
Thank you.
So that, I hope that answers your question. I don't know whether, Joe, you want to add anything to that.
No, just to add, Chair, that we are developing a very clear communications plan. Pablo, who's on the call, is leading on that, and that will be both within the council, how we communicate with people like yourselves, but also how we communicate out to the broader stakeholders and network across Hertfordshire, including our schools and faith groups and community and voluntary sector. So there will be a very clear communication plan in place.
I think the other thing that's just worth mentioning is with regard to Fit, Fed and Read. Yes, it has operated for a couple of years previously on a way smaller scale than this, way smaller. And indeed, to some extent, it was almost a, shall we say, a voluntary offer that was delivered. But this is very, very, very different and in scale, huge. Nigel Quinton.
Thanks, Terry. Sorry, just a quick data check. I think in the presentation, Joe, you mentioned a figure of just over £2 million being available. In Appendix 1, it quotes a number of 2.786 million. Quite a big difference there. I just wonder if you could comment.
Pablo, could you just the number in the presentation is 2.2.
Yes, I took that actually from the proposal that came in from Heart Sports Partnership, but
I see.
there are a couple of different totals. I think, Joe, you sent one in initially just before Christmas, so there does need to be some clarity on that, because it applies to 1920, 2021. So I just need to get some clarity on that myself.
Yeah, and I'm aware that you've been in touch with the Department of Education along with other local authorities to see when we'll get the grant allocation. My understanding very broadly is that 2.2 that was quoted is actually for the next financial year, but the broad overall total is actually 2.7, Pablo, but we can come back and confirm.
Yeah,
so the figure in the report, Nigel, is the correct one.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But we will. I know that the government funding across the country for the winter grant scheme was £170 million, and for the holiday activity fund was £220 million. Yeah. And although our proportion changed marginally, yes, I think the headline figure when it came out was 2.79 million or something like that. But it can be, we can confirm, Pablo can confirm later. Jeff Jones.
Yes, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Thank you for the presentation. We have got some substantial funding for this, so it'd be very interesting to see. We're at the foundation stage. I appreciate that, what you can be rolling out in Easter is going to be very different to the summer. I would imagine Easter's going to be more virtual, and fingers crossed, let's hope that summer we could be there could be restrictions eased and we can have a lot more activities. I just wonder, can you just give us a little bit of a taster of what you might be considering to offer in Easter, and of course in summer as well? Just a little taster would be nice. Might get us to understand the programme a bit better.
Joe may wish to answer that, but Jeff, being humorous for a moment, when you go out to a restaurant for a meal, you don't stand outside and say, "Can I have a sample of one of the dishes on the main course?" Do you?
Yeah, but I wouldn't go to that restaurant, Chairman, if I knew what was off. If I didn't know what was on offer.
But that's giving Jo time to consider her response to you.
Thank you. Okay. And certainly, just looking at what some of the pilots have done elsewhere in the country during this whole period of time, there are some really good examples that we may well want to build on in Hertfordshire. For example, the provision of online fitness classes, online cookery classes, online group work for vulnerable teenagers, or a whole range of activities that have been put out there. Other things that have been noted, and indeed we've done it ourselves in Hertfordshire during the whole pandemic period, is the distribution of arts and crafts packs to families, or packs of food to enable them to do cooking as a family together. So those sorts of things have been very well received in some of the pilots, and may well be what we want to build on across Hertfordshire. But what we will be doing is inviting our partner agencies, the whole wealth of organisations working across Hertfordshire, to think about ideas and to come up with ideas too as part of the bidding process. So we look forward to, to really thinking outside the box about how we can make this an exciting, albeit virtual probably, activity programme across the Easter period. Hopefully moving forward to the summer, we really want to, fingers crossed, as you said, have some face-to-face activities with full attendance in them, and those will be sports, and they will be music, and they will be dance, a whole range of activities for all age groups. We are doing some really good thinking. We've engaged some partners to really start thinking about how we engage teenagers and what would interest them. So again, we want to make sure that it's fully inclusive. And the only other point I would say is that we're also engaging already with some of our short break local offer organisations to make sure we're thinking about children with a high level of additional needs and disabilities, and making sure that we're fully inclusive of all children.
I think the other thing I would also add, if I may, Jeff, is that 2020 was the Hertfordshire Year of Culture, and although it was, if you like, truncated by virtue of the pandemic, there were a number of things and a number of activities that developed, and Creative Hearts was quite proactive in this. But there's a legacy from the Year of Culture that I think may well go forward and will pick up exactly what Jo has just said, and ally it, the comments that she's made, and the activity, the creative activities that can hopefully come to the fore during this year.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Annie Brewster, your hand is up, and I hope you can hear us.
I hope you can hear me. Yes.
Yes, we can.
Joe, music to my ears when you talk about cookery. I think that's something we've spoken about before, and I remember sending our boys on a cookery course, and of course they learn things like cakes and things like that, but these children need to learn how to boil an egg or make scrambled egg, and things that they can then continue to do, because it's putting the oxygen mask on the parent effectively in the plane. You know, we need to see how they can sustain themselves, even if their parents maybe aren't the greatest cooks. So that's brilliant. Interesting, in our village, when we looked to what young people wanted, we've got a small 3G pitch, a small one, which is free, which is wonderful for physical activity. But the girls largely wanted performing arts, and we supplement each of those in the village for a proper stage school. So that was quite a good way, and through parish council. So if some of these things can be known right to the bottom level is great. But with my Heart Sports Partnership hat on, very excitingly, I told Terry, and Terry know this, but the Sport England announced their new 10-year strategy yesterday. Yes. And it's all about getting the nation moving, and quite strong on obesity, which is quite bold, but they're saying it. But it's big emphasis on levelling up, and very much on children and young people. So I don't think anyone knows what the funding opportunities are going to be yet, but this is perfect timing for what you're doing. So you might want to circulate that document to the members, because it's got a lot in there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Annie.
Annie, I am taking what you just said and your words with my Heart Sports Partnership hat on. Should I be taking that you are making a declaration of interest?
Oh, I should do that. Sorry, I'm on the executive board. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm sure that our Democratic Services folks will have acknowledged.
It's on my interest. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Annie. Mark Watkin.
Thank you very much, Terry, and thank you, Joe, for that presentation. I'm going to hold up my hands here. I'm slightly ignorant of the Heart Sports Foundation. I know of it, but I don't know exactly how it works. Sport partnership, I beg your pardon. But I think my key point is really, is this going to be a delivery vehicle going out to lots of amateur groups? I mean, I can think of my grandchildren involved in local clubs, football clubs, rugby clubs, that sort of thing. Music, the same. I mean, how do we actually see this appearing on the ground? Will it be through voluntary groups being given the opportunity? And just a passing comment, I absolutely welcome your objective to make it sustainable. So this isn't just a short-term sticking plaster, but this is a whole new structure that you're creating here that will last hopefully years into the future. But without getting into detail, I'm just not quite sure how the thing comes together. So sorry, can you just clarify that for me?
Yeah, so Hearts Community Foundation, as part of the coordinating body, are going to be administering grants. So there will be a criteria for grant applications that organisations can apply to for certain levels of funding. So it might be that some of the smaller groups want to apply for smaller levels, but some of the bigger groups that maybe have a Hertfordshire footprint rather than a small footprint in one part of the county might want to apply for bigger levels of money. So we're working up and developing a criteria and a grant application process so that organisations can bid in and be awarded funding. I hope that answers your question, Mark.
No, that's very helpful, and clearly at this stage we have to wait and see what comes out, Joe. But
yeah,
I will be letting my son, who's involved in one of these groups, to let him know to keep his eyes open for it, because they're very active in the community, and I'm sure they'll want to make an application. Thank you.
Terry, could I just jump in there if I may?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course.
Mark, Heart Sports Partnership interacts with virtually every sports club in the county. So they provide training advice, they do the sports, they help coordinate when they have, I don't think they have them now, but the annual school sports events, so they're there. They're a small group, but they're very active, about pulling everything together in relation to sport and physical activity in the county. So I just Google them. You'll find a lot about them there. And John O'Callaghan, who's the chief executive, is so enthusiastic. I can't tell you. I've known him for several years. So I really feel that we'll be in safe hands with them. So.
Yes, if I could just respond, Chair. First of all, thank you, Terry. That's been very helpful. Actually, on my other computer, I've got their website open, and they are, as you say, a very enthusiastic-looking bunch. So I'm delighted to hear it. And I guess that would be the case. My ignorance is no excuse. I've just not come across them directly. I know of them, but thank you for all that. That's helpful.
And not only that. Sorry, Terry. Did you want to come back at all?
No, fine, thank you. No.
Okay. And also, of course, they are regular contributors to the retitled Hearts Lifestyle Network, which was the Hertfordshire Lifestyle and Legacy Partnership coming out of the 2012 Olympic Games. And so that's a forum which all the district and boroughs and it's the activity officers from those boroughs get involved with as well. So the word does spread far and wide. Leslie Greensmith, a question or comment?
Yes, can I just say, excellent presentation. But when you're talking about engaging teenagers, wearing a different hat, I need to declare an interest. I'm a trainer, assessor and a swimming teacher as well. A good way of engaging teenagers is through life-saving skills, which include not only the wet side and the swimming side, it's the first aid and the CPR, etc. I personally do train that sort of age group in those skills. And once you can hook them in, they seem to really love it. And it's obviously not at the moment with the COVID restrictions, but it's a very good way at getting them engaged. And also it gives them a social side of it, which they seem to love. So I just thought I'd put a little plug in there for my work side. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Lynn Chesterman. Lynn.
Thank you, Terry. Two comments really. One is Joe, just one in Hatfield, and I'm sure in other districts, we still deliver grants. And one of the most difficult things when you're in a voluntary organisation is keep filling out a multitude of grant application forms that all ask very different questions but lead to the same thing. It's just a suggestion. It might be worth having a chat with those district councils who still deliver grants for sporting activities and everything else. So it's almost a very similar grant application form and you're not reinventing the wheel. So that's just one comment that might be helpful. The other thing, I suppose I should have flagged up earlier as well, but it's just the same with this. I am a little bit worried that we could end up with two groups of children. Quite rightly, we are majoring on those children who are eligible for free school meals. And if we don't fill it, it's the families who can afford to pay. I am worried about that middle ground, and particularly those key workers who are on minimum wage, who, if they do self-isolate or if they are off, only get statutory sick pay, which is about £93 a week to live on. Now, to go off for 2 weeks if you've been beeped by the test and trace, that is all you're going to get is your 93 quid. But they are not claiming universal credit. So I'm just worried if we're not careful, can we just monitor that we don't have the haves and the have-nots? Because at the moment, we seem to be talking about two very extreme groups, that some parents, although they're working, although they're doing everything else, just won't be able to afford to pay because they're too near that benefit line, but they're not eligible for it. Thank you.
Joe, is that something you can answer?
Yeah, well, it's some. I mean, I think it's a really good point that you've made. So thank you very much. And it's something certainly that we've been thinking about. And I think, you know, we want our activity programme to be inclusive of all children. So we certainly don't want it to just be inclusive of children who are eligible for free school meals. But also, particularly over the Easter period, where we're still in this sort of heightened part of the pandemic, the online provision we anticipate will be affordable to people who might want to pay for it, but that it won't be vastly expensive because it's being provided online. We're anticipating that we will be able to make it affordable, and that might go some way to address the point that I think you're making, Lynn, which is a really good one, which is what about those people who sort of sit in between and who aren't eligible for free school meals but nonetheless are struggling financially. But we can give that some more thought at the steering group. It's a point I'm happy to take there.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Lynn. That's a good, very good and valid point that you've raised, and it's good that Joe will be able to take that away. So good. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. I am not seeing any other requests to speak or in any way, so I think probably we can move to the recommendation at 3.1, and can I just say thank you to Joe just before we do move to that. If Simon Newland is still with us, and I think he may be. Simon, did you want to add anything finally across the whole piece? Not sure Simon is. No, I think Simon has left it in the very capable hands of Joe. So thank you again, Joe, and thank you to Pablo as well. It's there's a big team behind. Well, there's a team. I was going to say a big team. Frequently, there's not a huge team, but huge amount of work and pulling together the various strands of this. And I think the one thing that's demonstrated in this second part of the meeting is just the sheer number of strands that will be drawn together for the benefit of everybody. So thank you both, or all of you, for that. The recommendation I'm going to move to now, please, just to read it so we're all clear. The Joint Cabinet Panel is the Joint Cabinet Panel is asked to consider the content of this report and note and comment upon the County Council's progress to date in implementing the Winter COVID Grant Scheme, and to note and comment upon the County Council's preparations for the holiday activities and food programme. I'm going to take a gamble here, and with the permission of Democratic Services, they may stop me, but I do get the feeling that there is universal approval to these recommendations. So if I'm allowed to, Democratic Services, can we take it like that, unless people want?
No, we have to put it in the chat box, please, Chairman.
Okay, fine. So if you could put it in the chat box, thank you. Agree.
Majority agreed, Chairman.
Yeah, I was trying to get round this because I couldn't actually get to my type agreed, but I can now. So just for good order. Fine, so that is agreed. There is no other part one business. The next date of the next meeting is scheduled for the 15th of March 2021 at 9:30, which is a joint meeting prior to the it should be a very short meeting prior to the Children, Young People and Families panel to consider the specialist resource provision, but more of that anon. So thank you all very much indeed. Great contributions, really appreciate them, and thank you to everybody who has taken part, and I wish you good morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Terry.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks, Terry.
Bye.
Bye, Terry. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.